Well, folks, this truck looks familiar, and yeah, it is. This is Darwin Gilmore's truck. He's the Dean of Workforce here at Chipola College. This is the big boss, man. What a way to start a season. You know, we work on business and industry vehicles, college vehicles, students' vehicles, and all kinds of vehicles here at Tech Garage. But, boy, we got the big boss this season. What a great way to start. Darwin, what's going on? It looks like a fairly new pickup truck.
Thank you. It does look pretty sharp, doesn't it?
It does.
It's running kind of tough. It's got some sketchiness to it, running rough.
Sketchiness? I'm sure we can. Give me the keys. I got the best crew in the business here at Tech Garage. We'll handle it. No worries at all, especially for the big boss, somebody like you. And you guys join us today on Tech Garage. This new season starts right now. Welcome to Season 9 of Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com. Wow, Season 9. This is going to be the greatest season ever. How can I say that? Well, Garage Ed's all about the air conditioning system. And we have a new segment called Keep It or Crush It. We're either going to fall in love with the car or get rid of it. Crush it. Out it goes. And in true Tech Garage fashion, man, we got the coolest demos, cutaways, technology on the planet. And speaking of coolest, Dave, here you are, my man.
John, we're doing something we've never done before with the Keep It or Crush It. Used car prices are insane these days, so we're finding some vehicles. We found a minivan, we found a mid-'80s Ford pickup truck, and of course a Chevrolet Square Body, which is the crown jewel. It's a four-wheel drive, it's a short bed. We think we can clean that up and make a huge profit on that and give somebody a nice vehicle as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's going to be a phenomenal segment, but here we go, Dave. I'm not going to let you off the hook that easy. I got a 2016 Ford F-150 in the shop, man. Some new technology, 5.0 liter, coil on plug. Got a code P0300. That's a random misfire. Now the P, that's a powertrain code. The 0, that means it's generic. The 3 is an ignition system, and the 00 is that random misfire. Shocker, Dave?
No, you said the magic words, coil on plug. And that's the thing that tends to go wrong with vehicles, these Fords from this era.
Yeah, and you know, last season we had one of these. You ran your Jurassic Park test, and it was pretty easy to isolate. You know, this one here, it could be anything.
Hey, why don't y'all just use the scan tool and you can do a power balance test on it?
Just run up scan tool, power balance test. Yeah, I should have known.
Dave,
Yeah.
Just do what the kid says.
Oh, thanks a lot. Yeah, probably a good idea, Dave. Let's take a ride. Well, we got our fancy-dancy scan tool in here, and like Josh said, why don't you run a power balance test?
He was right.
He's absolutely right. So what we did is we hooked up the scan tool here. I went into some special tests. This is pretty cool. You can actually do what he said. You can run a power balance test. And under that power balance test, it's going to show us all the cylinders, which is really neat. And with all the cylinders, we should be able to see that one that we're kind of feeling. You felt it.
I felt it absolutely. So we know it's misfiring somewhere very clearly. This will tell us which cylinder it is.
It'll tell us what cylinder it is. Matter of fact, I'm going to fire it up. And when I fire up the truck, it's going to go ahead. We're going to let it stabilize. A lot of times they're in this open loop. The computer's getting the thing all going and everything's fine. So we'll wait a couple of seconds. But this is really cool. If I wanted to run a power balance test, Dave, I could actually cancel the cylinder. So injector number 1, I can disable that cylinder. And when I disable it, you'll see injector number 1 start to drop out right there.
Yeah.
All right, there it goes.
Feel it too.
Right, yeah, you feel it. So it's killing that cylinder right there.
Yep.
Now I exit that there, I enable it, I put it back, all right, put the injector back, and see one comes back. But check this out, now I'm not disabling nothing. Let's give it a little minute. Uh-oh, they all should be flat. What's happening here?
Cylinder 4 dropping out.
Cylinder 4 is dropping out. I'm not disabling it. So basically, dead to rights, we actually found that misfire.
That is it. And it could be the coil, could be the plug, could be the injector.
Could be the coil, the plug, the injector, could even be compression, we're not sure yet. So as a do-it-yourselfer or even out in the driveway, a really cool test, you can go ahead and swap the coil and plugs, maybe take an easy one from this side and just move them. If the misfire moves, well, then it's the coil or the plug. If it doesn't move, uh-oh.
So you don't need to have a scan tool like this. You can actually do it in your driveway. We're going to show you how to do that next.
Yeah, absolutely. Stick around because we'll show you the test what we run. We'll show you how to do it. We'll be back with more Tech Garage presented by RockAuto.com.
Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com, is brought to you by Magic Creeper, the most versatile creeper ever, and by RockAuto.com, all the parts your car will ever need.
Well, welcome back to Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com. Well, we have Darwin Gilmore, the Dean of Workforce here at the college, back with us. Darwin, you're a little bit early, my man. We're not done yet.
I need my truck, brother. How soon are we talking?
Well, I'll tell you what, Dave's found the actual Misfire. Dave's good like that. But you know, Rock Auto hooked us up with a bunch of coils, all 8 of them in spark plugs. So your truck's going to be good for 200,000 more miles. You're not going to have any more issues. Now, you're running errands and stuff, this business industry partnership. Tell us a little bit about it. What's going on here?
You know, the skills gap is such a problem, and you've proven that business and industry partnerships work and work well. Our partnership with Rex Lumber teaches them how to work on hydraulics, pneumatics, motors, PLCs. These things are a necessity to make an automated factory work. We also have a business and industry partnership with the state of Florida, the Arson Group, where we're building a unit that helps dispose safely of explosives. Another one I'm thinking of, construction. We have recently finished our first program with Habitat for Humanity, where we built a house from the ground up with our instructor, with our students. And you know, the apprenticeship we're about to launch with the Law Enforcement Academy and a local agency is going to be groundbreaking for us. So yeah, we got stuff to do. We're in a hurry.
Yep, you know, at Tech Garage, we're all about business industry partnerships, but we better get your truck finished. I know Dave's chomping at the bit, so why don't you get those parts over to him? And meanwhile, I'll show you guys an actual business industry partnership demo right here, which is really cool, man. LKQ, Holly, everybody stepped up to the plate, and they give us one of the coolest training demos on the planet. Now let's talk about that engine, how to misfire. But let's say, for example, you had spark and you had fuel. Well, now you have an engine problem, so you have to check the mechanical integrity of your engine. Let's start out with a first test, pretty simple one called a vacuum test. So what I did here is I took the gauge and I hooked it up to a vacuum source. And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to run this motor. And when I run the motor, watch the gauge. We'll see if we have vacuum here. And I love the vacuum and I love the motor. That was showing about 15 or 16. That's pretty good. You want anywhere from 15 to about 22 inches of mercury. Matter of fact, take a look at this graphic right here. You can see normal vacuum is 17 to 21. Low vacuum can be anywhere from 5 to 10. Steady vacuum, but low. Check the timing. You got a vacuum leak there. If the gauge is flicking or fluctuating, a lot of time that's an actual valve issue. Or if you hold it to 2,500 RPM and it slowly drops to 0, well, then you have a clogged exhaust. So you can check that, or a catalytic converter. That's the first test. Now the next one you want to do, it's an actual compression test, and I can demo that for you as well. Take it, blow the spark plug, get the stuff away from it, get the engine up to operating temperature. Then what you want to do is you want to go ahead and remove the spark plug. I'm going to pop this one off down here, and then I'm going to remove this spark plug right here. Now, of course, I ran the engine, so these headers are burning hot, so I'm going to try to be careful. And you do the same at home. Just let the engine get a little bit warm. You guys can see the spark plug come out of the hole. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the compression gauge, and I'm going to insert it where the spark plug was. Now, why do I want to do that? I want to check the compression, or the pressure that the cylinder's making. Come up to the top of the motor here. I'm going to block the throttle wide open so you guys can make sure we got full air going in and coming out. And then I'll hook up the gauge. And when I hook up the gauge, what I want to do is I want to run it through 4 compression cycles, or 4 puffs. I'll disconnect the ignition so the car doesn't start. And then I'm going to go through 4 puffs. So if you guys watch the gauge and get real close on that, you'll see it come up as we start to get compression. 1, 2, 3, 4. This one's showing about $150. This engine's in good shape. If you had low compression, you'd have an issue. Now we can actually take a look at this graphic here. Kind of talks a little bit about it. My cylinder compression gauge. It's in good shape if they're all together. If you got more of the cylinders low, 20% around, you got a tired engine. If one or more cylinders low, it's just going to be that, hey, I want to check that cylinder and see what's going on. If they're adjacent cylinders side by side, you could have a head gasket problem. Now that's a good look at compression, but if you had an issue or low compression, you'd want to run a cylinder leakage test. And you don't want to miss that, so stick around. There's plenty more Tech Garage. Right after this break, we'll run that test. Welcome back to Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com. Now, before the commercial break, we saw compression and how to make those readings. But I want to take it a little further before we get into the cylinder leakage test. You know, if you had low compression, you can run what's called a wet compression test. Take some oil, squirt it into the cylinder, and when you squirt it in the cylinder, rerun the test. If compression comes up, you have bad rings. Why is that? Well, the oil's taking the place of those rings and it's going to raise the compression for a few puffs, and you can isolate if you had bad rings. Now, why do you even want compression? Well, you know, you need to squish that fuel and that air mixture to make a good explosion. So your engine needs about 90 psi compression. If you didn't have that, well, you can shift over to a cylinder leakage test. Now, a cylinder leakage test, I have to actually switch the hose. The hose is a little bit different because we're going to put air into the cylinder and not out like a compression test. So I'm going to put that hose in there, and then what you want to do is you want to put your engine on top dead center compression stroke. Well, how can you do that? You can actually come down to the harmonic balancer. A lot of those marks on there, if you look at a harmonic balancer, you can bring that up right there to the 0. That's usually top dead center. Or you can come over here and you can have it puff and then bring it back a little bit. You can look in with a flashlight, making sure it's coming up to top dead center, because you want both valves closed. You want to be able to put air in the cylinder and it should go nowhere. So here's the deal. I have my cylinder leakage gauge here. I'm just going to hook it up. Okay, and then what I would do is I'd take an air source. I got my air source right here, plug it in here, and then what I'll slowly do is I'll slowly start to inject air in the cylinder. Like I said, it really should go nowhere. But if it is coming out, well, you can take a look at this graphic right here. It kind of shows you where it's going. You're going to have about 20% leakage. That's normal because the rings actually have to seat when the engine fires. But if you have more than 20%, you have a problem. So listen out of the actual carburetor or the throttle body. If it's coming out of there, well, you have an intake valve leaking. If it's coming out the exhaust pipe down there all the way in the exhaust, you got an exhaust valve leaking. If you take the dipstick or the oil cap off and it's coming out there, well, that's because the rings are blowing by and the crankcase is filling up with that air. You have bad rings. Now, this is pretty cool. If the adjacent cylinder or you have bubbles in the radiator, that means you have a blown head gasket. Well, now you can check the mechanical integrity of your engine. Let's switch gears a bit. You know, this season, Garage Ed's all about the air conditioning system. And Josh, well, he's getting us rolling.
Yeah, John, we're rolling on with AC this year in Garage Ed. Each segment is going to be dedicated to air conditioning. We're going to teach you how it works, why it works. That way you can know exactly what's going on with your air conditioning. You can diagnose it yourself.
Yeah, and I'm jealous. You look marvelous in your jacket, Josh.
Thank you.
Yep, I'm going to get on mine, so that means it's Garage Ed time. Where do we start? Fundamentals? I see you brought me a nice Coke here.
Yeah, let's start with the fundamentals. I got you a nice cold Coke.
Yeah, it's cold. It's actually cold on my hand.
No, not really. Actually, heat is transferring from your hand to the glass, so it's not really cold.
Oh, so we're starting some principles here. What are the 3 principles of heat transfer?
Well, let's start with the first one. The first one is conduction. So let me grab this wrench right here.
Right.
If you can heat up this wrench, what's going to happen is it's going to conduct down through the wrench and to my hand. I should feel it.
Oh, I'm going to enjoy this.
Ooh, it's getting hot. Ooh.
Is it getting hot?
My hand's starting to sweat.
Oh, awesome. Well, that's a good principle on a car because we have to have conduction in order to move the heat out of the car. What's another one?
Another one's convection. So if you fire your torch up again.
Okay.
All right, so it's heating up the air and it's creating an air current. I can feel that heat blowing over to my hand. That's convection.
Now, convection, we have a blower motor in the car picking up the heat, and we have a fan on the outside of the car throwing it to the outside.
Right.
So that's
Using
cool.
Convection.
Yep.
The other one's radiation. So like the sunshine, campfires, that kind of thing, you can feel the heat radiating literally to your hands.
Oh, so like the sun load sensor on the car. So when that radiation's coming down, it can adjust the temperature accordingly.
Absolutely.
That's neat. Well, you got some cool stuff here. It looks like you're going to blind me with science. What's this all about?
Well, what we're doing in the car is heat transfer. We're actually transferring heat inside the car to the outside of the car, from inside to outside.
Okay.
All right, so what we have here is I'm just kind of mimicking refrigerant. We're going to learn about components and that kind of thing, but compressors only deal with gas. So I have to lower the pressure of the refrigerant so I can boil it in the evaporator. So this is that. Check this out.
Whoa, it's boiling, but it's not hot. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's actually water boiling at room temperature. That's pretty neat, isn't it?
So that's what's going on. So if you look at this graphic right here, you can actually tell what's going on. You got the evaporator, you got the condenser. The evaporator's inside the car, so that refrigerant's boiling. It's actually grabbing the heat inside the car. It's transferring it with the actual refrigerant to the outside of the car where you have that fan motor speeding up convection and throwing the heat out. So an air conditioning system's nothing more than taking the heat from in the car and throwing it out of the car. That's how it works.
Looks complicated, but it's really simple.
It is really simple, but you know what? We have to go through all the components, and we'll do that on all the garage eds coming up this season. This is a pretty cool basics we set on this, but we need to know more. You know, after this commercial, we have Keep It or Crush It, our new segment, man. This is gonna be phenomenal. You don't wanna miss it. We'll check in with Dave and Tom at the Rock Auto desk, make sure that they have the parts so we can keep all these cool cars. So we're gonna run to commercial, but Josh, I'm gonna run home first and tell my mama she was wrong. If I open up the door, I'm not letting the cold out, I'm letting the heat in.
I don't know if I tell her.
I wouldn't, she'd probably smack me. You guys take a short break. We'll be right back with more Tech Garage presented by rockauto.com.
Tech Garage, presented by rockauto.com, is brought to you by Clamp Tight, the clamp making tool, and by rockauto.com, all the parts your car will ever need.
Tech Garage, presented by rockauto.com, rolls on, and you're going to love this segment. This is something we call Keep It or Crush It. That's right. We have some vehicles out there, Tom. We're going to decide whether we're going to try to maintain them and maybe flip them, maybe keep them, or if they're a lost cause and we're going to have to crush it. The vehicles we have out there: 07 Nissan Quest minivan. We've got an 87 Ford F-250, a classic Chevy K10 truck that we think we're going to keep, and a 2010 Scion. So how can you use rockauto.com to decide whether you're going to keep these cars or get rid of them?
Well, you can look over the vehicle and see things it obviously needs, like rusted out body panels and new brakes, new shocks, and just start putting those in a cart and then see what the total is. And then I would take that amount and add it to the purchase price of the vehicle and see what that total is, and then see if you could take that total and buy an equivalent vehicle. And I'm guessing you won't be able to. If you buy a $3,000 used car and put $2,000 worth of parts in it, you have a $5,000 vehicle and you can't find an equivalent used vehicle that costs that much. Especially if it's like a minivan and the trucks, it's like if you need to haul 7 people, you need a work truck. A new pickup truck starts at $50,000 an hour or whatever, so you can put a lot of parts in that.
Well, rockauto.com has all the parts your car will ever need, and at reliably low prices, which is really important in today's environment. Speaking of environment, it's blazing hot out there. John and Josh are out there. I'm going to go join them.
Well, before we get to the vehicles behind us, let's talk about that F-150. Josh, you put the coils, the spark plugs all the way in it, all the way around. What did you find out?
Hooked up the scan tool to the Ford and went through the thing, got to the power balance test. Looked at that graph. I mean, it's a straight line, man. There's no bouncing around. Looks really good.
Yeah, that graph was nice and straight before it was dropping out to 4 and 6, and you can see it go right across the screen. So good job. That car's done. Well, let's get to the segment y'all been waiting for. This is Keep It or Crush It, man. And we got some vehicles behind us. We're going to talk all about keeping them or crushing them. Dave, there's a lot to it when you flip vehicles.
Well, yeah, and it's becoming more popular because used cars are so expensive these days. New cars are even more expensive, which makes the used cars more appealing. So a lot of folks want to keep the car that they have for a long time, as long as they can, or as we're finding out, flipping it is also a good little side thing. You make a few extra bucks and help someone get a nice car.
So let's talk about our flips back here, Dave. Let's start with contestant number 1.
This is really cool. Contestant number 1, we've got a great variety, and this one is a 1984 Chevrolet pickup. It's a square body, more and more popular, and we found it with a manual transmission, 4-wheel drive, and the short bed, which is almost impossible to find because back in those days it was just a truck and people used them and abused them. Well, now the Gen Xers want these vehicles because it's what we grew up riding in. We bought it for 800 bucks. It was a barn find, truly a barn find. 800 bucks. All we have to do is get it running, and we get like $8 grand for this thing. And if we want to go to the next level and fully restore it, these things are getting between $40,000 and $50,000. So
yeah, super rare vehicle.
So we are keeping this one.
Yeah,
we know this is an automatic.
I personally love that truck, but
Yeah.
Let's move on. This is a 1987 F-250. Kind of the theme of the trucks. I mean, trucks are super expensive, but you know, this one, we'll check the mechanical integrity of them as we start getting into the season. We paid about $1,000 for it. Looks like this one may be a flip, or we'll keep it. We'll see how it works out. Now, Josh, I know you're all about a van. We actually have a 2007 Nissan Quest. What about the van, man?
And I'm a fan of the van, man. The reason is I'm a family guy. I have some kids, drive around. A lot of people out there have kids as well. So this thing, it looks kind of dented up and stuff, but we'll see. Hopefully it's going to be a keep it. I don't want to crush it. Hopefully we can be able to keep it and get it to work out.
Last but not least, we got a Scion here. Or you got, I should say.
Yeah, this is.
And, wow, Dave, I'm crushed, man. I thought you did a little more research on
Well,
this one.
so the guy said this ran, and I thought maybe with the hood being beat up the way it is that I could get a good deal on it, and I did. He said it ran. Well, here's what we got.
Oh, it runs, but hey, Benjamin, go ahead, fire it up. Ooh. That's good. Yeah, it's gonna run, but not for long. That knock, that is a dangerous situation. Sounds like a rod knock really deep in that engine. You could rebuild it, but $100 an hour, you're talking about 20 hours, that's $2,000. You can put a motor in, that's $3,000.
$3,000 on a car.
Not a good idea.
The Blue Book value is only about $2,000, and clearly on this one, I made a mistake trusting somebody at his word. So, John, I think we're gonna crush it.
We're gonna crush this one? Josh, we're gonna crush it! We're gonna crush it! Woohoo!
I was gonna crush it.
Oh boy. Well, I'll tell you what, this has been a phenomenal start to the season, Dave. The Garage Ed with the AC fundamentals, this is gonna be real good. We got our flippets, and we nailed it with that F250. That thing is going smooth as ice, brother.
These flips are going to be great. Once Josh is done with this, we're going to start working on these vehicles. And in the coming weeks, we're going to show you each of these vehicles and what it's going to take to get them back up and running.
Yep.
And do not forget, send us your email questions at feedback@techgarage.tv.
Yep, we'll see you next week. That's enough of this mess.